Hey, Archie, a lot of changes coming for 401ks and simple IRAs in the new year.
Yeah, there's a ton. Let's get into it. I'm Archie Hoxton.
And I'm Rob Hoxton.
And this is Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. Welcome back to the Last Paycheck Podcast, brought to you by Hoxton Planning and Management. We're your hosts, CFP professionals Archie Hoxton and Rob Hoxton. And today we're going to talk about changes that are coming to the retirement account landscape. Talking about 401ks, simple IRAs, inherited IRAs, all kinds of changes, clarifications. So there's a couple really important changes that I think are going to be kind of game changers for what some might call a retirement planning crisis in America.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is pretty big. If for most of our audience, you're either close to retired or are retired, these changes affect me personally as well because of the age brackets that we're going to talk about. So I think this is really exciting. And over the last almost 33 years now that I've been practicing, the rules on 401ks and IRAs change, it seems like, every year. And so it's difficult to keep all of it straight.
Right.
It's difficult for us. I'm sure it's difficult for our viewer.
Yeah, it's part of our job is just making sure that, we're keeping track and keeping people, inside the guardrails. And so, yeah, if it's not your full-time job, you kind of have to take some time out of your personal life to make sure you're, staying compliant with the rules and taking advantage of new opportunities that arise.
So I love the name. So what is a super catch-up?
Yeah. So let's talk about one of the key rules of 401ks. Also applies to simple IRAs in this particular case, but really in retirement accounts in general, when you hit 50 years old, the government has decided that, okay, we're going to allow people who are 50 years and older to make additional contributions beyond the set maximum. So in 2025, the 401k maximum contribution is $23,500.
This is employee contribution.
Employee contribution. Yeah, what if I'm an employee, it's what I can defer of my income into the 401k.
The employer contribution is in addition to that.
Right.
Yeah. We're just talking about employee, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, if I'm 50 years old or older, I can also contribute an additional $7,500 to that 401k. Right. And the idea is to allow people who are starting to get close to retirement and thinking, I'm maybe a little behind, or I'd like to chalk away a little more or save some more money on taxes or, whatever it might be. So I'm going to contribute an additional $7,500 towards that. So that's the catch up, and that applies to different types of accounts. But the new rule is, I call it a super catch up. It allows for an additional amount beyond the typical catch up for people ages 60 to 63. So this is kind of a weird time frame.
That is the coolest age group that there is.
Okay. I suppose that might be true. I think you're a little biased.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. So And this is an opportunity the government has decided to allow for people to get even more caught up on their contributions. And the rule is a little complicated, but it states that for 401ks, your catch up, rather than being $7,500 if you're in that age group, now goes to the greater of $10,000 or 150% of the previous year's catch up. So for 2025,
that is complicated.
Yeah. And it's, of course, while there's an opportunity in there, it also further complicates things. But the short answer is, for 2025, that number is $11,250 instead of $7,500 if you're between 60 and 63.
So that's in addition to what everyone that's under 50 can do. If you're between 60 and 63, you can put in
It replaces the 7,500.
Yeah.
So if you're 60 to 63, you can put in 23,500, which is the basic contribution limit, plus 11,250 for a total of 34,750.
Wow.
Yeah. Simple IRAs also get this super catch up.
Okay, can we just back up real quick? So a simple IRA is kind of like a 401k for a small company.
Right. Yeah. And they're simple. They're small. They're easy to manage. Not as much cost involved. Right now in 2025 or going into 2025, you can contribute 16,500 as the base contribution limit. If you're 50 or older, you can contribute another $3,500. If you're between the ages of 60 and 63, it's 5,000 or 150% of the previous year's catch-up limit, which translates to, for 2025, an additional 5,250. So 16,500 plus 5,250 if you're between 60 and 63.
I wonder who the guy was or gal was that came up with 60 to 63. Why not 65 or some other age, but 63?
Yeah, maybe just the negotiations of, hey, how do we manage the loss of revenue that comes from this? And they got negotiated down to a weird age. That could be it. I mean, these are all political processes that determine this. So
Good point.
It's, but it is annoying.
It's like whoever came up with the idea back in the day that required minimum distributions started when you were age 70 and a half.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, it's...
Why not just 70?
Yeah. Round it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Some diabolical person who's like, we're going to make all financial planners go crazy.
Yeah.
Because we're going to make it 70 and a half.
Yeah.
Or we're going to make it 63.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. And then we're going to make the penalty 50% if you miss it.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
Yeah. So that's the change there. There's another change that's happening with catch-ups, which we did another episode on, but where catch-up, that amount, that 7,500 or that, super catch-up amount has to go towards Roth instead of pre-tax. That's a change that's going into effect as well. Kind of a different topic, and it's something that 401k providers are trying to scramble to get on top of, and they've been deferring that.
It's kind of cool, really. I mean, you don't get that same tax benefit, but you get money in that really tax-favored bucket that you can use in retirement. It has all kinds of really great benefits.
Right.
So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too. Because I believe in having multiple different tax buckets. You've got a taxable investment account, you've got pre-tax account, you've got Roth account. Hopefully maybe also HSA. If you've got that, you've got a really great degree of flexibility. But that's just beside the point.
So we see two things that the government is doing to make it easier for people to save and have a sound retirement.
Right.
There are some other changes that I think you're going to talk about next that show additional ways that the government is going to kind of try to influence our behavior so that we have a more secure retirement.
Right. And I like this a lot because part of why Americans are finding themselves unprepared for retirement is that over the course of time, fewer and fewer companies have offered pensions because pensions are complicated and expensive, and there is liability involved with them. And so there's a lot of companies just abandoned pensions altogether. They grandfathered in some people and then said, all right, everybody hired after this date doesn't get the pension, they get a 401k. 401ks are much less expensive to administer. The company doesn't have much risk. And it's up to the
employee has the risk
to take the risk in investing, to learn how to manage their investments, and to save, to actually contribute to it. And so the system was, realistically, it was very possible that someone gets hired at a company and works there their entire life, never bothers to enroll in the 401k or doesn't do it, early on and waits till much later. And then they come to find that that's not enough time. They don't have enough saved, and they don't have a good nest egg for retirement. So what the government has decided to implement is an automatic opt-in system for 401ks. So right now, by default, you are opted out of the 401k. You have to decide to opt in.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to go and enroll when you're getting hired or at some point with HR and get yourself in the 401k and deferring income into it.
You have to do something.
Right.
You have to take the initiative.
Right. With this new development, we have a situation where now it's not mandatory. You don't have to participate in the 401k, which is what I like about it. I think you should have the freedom to choose, but you're automatically opted in at a minimum of 3% and no more than 10% of the contribution of your income contributed. So if you don't want to do that, you just go and you opt out. But this way, you're saving right out of the gate. Now, this only applies to 401k plans that were formed after December 29th, 2022. So a lot of 401k plans this won't apply to, but newer ones, it will.
And there's a ton of research that supports this concept that human beings are like static. I mean, once they're moving in a particular direction, they don't really take the initiative to make changes.
Right.
And I remember it's been probably 15 years ago when the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was established. I served on a committee to talk about ways that the government could encourage positive outcomes, things that people would do if they were automated that would help them have more in the future. And it was a little freaky because, they had, here's a government that's trying to sort of in a way manipulate positive behavior. I mean, it's behavior that people are glad that they engaged in down the road, but it seemed a little big brothery. And I remember sitting at the conference table with all of these really smart people from various different walks of profession, and the camera above, I'd never seen this before, but whenever you would talk, the camera would turn and look at you. And I thought, oh my goodness, it's like the government is spying on me right here in this room. So anyway, this is an example of sort of a social engineering experiment that's worked really well.
Yeah.
And the government continues to do it.
Benign paternalism.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And I think that in some cases, like with this, right? I mean, it's no different. Well, it is different, but it is in the same way. It's the same idea as signing up. You get hired at a company and you're enrolled in their pension and you start accumulating a pension benefit, right? I think that, and you could just work at the company, retire and get your paycheck for the rest of your life. Yeah, that was a great system for most people, but we don't have that anymore. And so this is kind of a step to say, okay, now that we're sort of in the 401k world, you're still going to have some automatic, retirement contributions, retirement benefits. Because if you don't enroll right away and you start spending the money and you get used to spending the income, it's hard to cut back to make the contribution. So there is something to that from a behavioral perspective. I think we all know that if it's automatic, you're going to be fine. You're probably even forget that you're even doing it. But if you have to cut back by 10% on your living expenses in order to contribute, I mean, it takes discipline, and
it does.
It's easier to just go around the discipline.
Yeah, if you can automate good behavior, we all know that we should spend less than we earn and save the difference. But if we can't figure out a way to make that happen automatically for us, where we're paying ourselves first, the likelihood that it actually happens is pretty low.
Right.
It's just human nature.
Yeah. So one last change I think we should talk about really briefly. This is a gigantic can of worms. We're going to fly over really, really high level. But we've gotten clarification about inherited IRAs and what's required. And, as far as taking required distributions from inherited IRAs, right? So you get an IRA if you're not the spouse or you don't fall under one of these other categories to where you can stretch the required distributions way out into the future. Most people are going to have a 10-year period to withdraw the entire balance of the IRA. And some of us, when that happens, will have requirement each year. You have to take out a certain amount every single year. Finally, we get clarity that if the person you inherited it from was required to take distributions, then you're required to take distributions through the 10-year period and have it empty by year 10. If they weren't taking required distributions, so they were, pre-required distribution age, then you don't have to take them either. You just have to have it empty by year 10. Now, does it make sense to take a little bit out each year, to take a tenth of the account out, that depends entirely on your personal situation, and the tax impact that it would have. But the key thing that the IRS has said now is that they are no longer waiving the penalty if you don't take it. So you need to figure out if you're required to take it. You can have your CPA help you, your financial planner help you. You can have the financial institution to help you. But you need to know because they're reinstituting the penalty if you miss it starting next year.
Don't forget, because it's expensive.
Yeah, it's 25%, which is
25% on top of the tax that's due.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to put it up in the over 50% range for many people.
Potentially.
Yeah.
So anyways, we finally have clarity on that, but that we're a little over time. So that's about all. But if you like this and you want to ask questions or leave a comment, please leave a comment below, or we've got our number here. You can give us a call or a text. Set up an appointment to chat with us. Remember to subscribe, like the video, sign up for notifications, share with your family and friends, and then we'll hope to see you next time. You've been watching Last Paycheck, weekly wisdom to help you retire and stay that way. If you like this show, be sure to hit like and subscribe. Last Paycheck is available anywhere you get your podcasts.